Well, these folks who live in Lancaster really know how to do the national anthem, don't they? Good afternoon and welcome everyone to the 2018 Pennsylvania Leadership Conference. You know, this is our 29th annual Pennsylvania Leadership Conference. We started back in 1989, and back in 1989, two college students from Pennsylvania had gone down to CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Conference in Washington, D.C., and those students came back to Pennsylvania and they said, you know, we ought to have a version of that here in Pennsylvania. And they went to our dearly departed good friend, Frederick Anton III, and Susan Staub, and a number of others, and said, would you help us put this together? And Mr. Anton was right there in the forefront. And the Pennsylvania Leadership Conference started in 1989. As the Reagan administration ended, the Pennsylvania Leadership Conference started to carry forward the conservative torch. And over the years, Mr. Anton made sure that this conference continued. We, of course, were deeply saddened last October at his passing. And tonight at our dinner, we have a special video presentation where we will honor him for all that he had done over 29 years to make this conference the success that it has become. And it was important that he do that because there was a time in the early 2000s when the conference sort of lagged a bit, but Pat Toomey came along and challenged Arlen Specter in a Republican primary, and a new wave of conservative activists, young folks, came into the movement, and Fred re-energized the conference, and then along came the Tea Party movement, and that energized the conference. And now, of course, we are in the Donald Trump era. So this conference has benefited along the way from all of those key developments nationally. And along the way, we have had a parade of very important and impressive speakers who have graced this podium. They include people like Laura Ingraham, Michael Reagan, Dick Morris, Charles Krauthammer, Frank Luntz, Cheryl Atkinson, Ted Cruz, Steve Hayes, Ann Coulter, last year Ben Shapiro, and tonight Byron York. So we have been pleased to have a who's who of the national conservative movement with us. And this year, it is even more important that we continue to carry that torch, because if you look at just what has happened in our state and nation over the last couple months, the need for a conservative conference, and note that I'm saying a conservative conference, not a Republican conference, a conservative conference, and there is a difference. Because most conservatives are Republican, but not all Republicans are conservatives. And if you look at what has been happening at the state level, despite large majorities in both the state House and the state Senate, we have seen Republicans willing to go along with Tom Wolf and his big tax and spend priorities. Fortunately, our conservative friends in the state House in particular, under the leadership of Mike Turzai, have prevented that from happening. But we still have work to do. We saw in the last few months what can happen when excessive judicial activism occurs, when the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, in what most of us believe to have been a violation of both the U.S. and state constitutions, threw out a redistricting plan that was approved in accordance with all established constitutional and legal structures, threw it out, and by judicial fiat, put in their own gerrymandered congressional districting plan with the sole purpose of advancing a national plan put together by Barack Obama and Eric Holder to help Democrats redistrict in key states in order to try to regain control of Congress. And our labor union-dominated Supreme Court did what their union masters asked them to do. Now we find ourselves in a battle for congressional district seats this fall. And at the national level, Republicans joined with Democrats a couple of weeks ago to pass a budget-busting spending bill, one that took all of the hard-won efforts that conservatives engaged in during the Obama administration to put in spending constraints, lifted those spending constraints, did away with the sequester, and once again busted the federal budget, adding trillions to our national deficit. And this was done with Republican complicity as well as Democrat. So Is there a need for the Pennsylvania Leadership Conference? Is there a need for a conservative movement? You bet it is. The Democratic left is more energized than ever before. They're out there with their resistance, and they're fighting tooth and nail, and we have to do the same thing. So today and tomorrow, what you're going to find is a long list of very prominent conservative speakers. We have panels that are going to provide you with a lot of policy information to take the battle forward, speakers who will energize you, and we are going to hear from every candidate on the Republican and Libertarian Party tickets for governor, U.S. senator, and lieutenant governor. They are all going to be here. So with that, I would like to ask to come up to the podium the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. I'm sure most of you know that Mr. Fred Anton was the chairman, president, and CEO of the PMA for many, many years. He has now entrusted us going forward with carrying out the mission. We are very pleased that David Taylor is the president and new CEO of the PMA. He has a history of fighting for conservative causes, having worked for Senator Rick Santorum, working locally for the late State Senator John Shoemaker, and for the last, 20 years? 20 years has been at PMA fighting to extend freedom and liberty throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the President and CEO of the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association, David Taylor.